Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Hello, welcome to the stream. Hey, Joe, how are you?
Good. How are you? Oh, that's interesting. My audio looks very low. Check, check, check. What happened to my audio, Tony?
Good question, Joe. What happened to your audio?
I don't know. Check, check. Oh, no, it's coming through. It's just very low on camera one. Okay, sorry. I probably blew everybody's ears out. David Grishko says now it's fine. It must have been YouTube. So we're trying out some new things here today. I thought my audio was bad. Oh, we got a 5x5 from Faris Mustafa.
Yes. Thank you, Ferris. Hey, Joe, I was looking forward to this. We haven't done this in a while, so good to be back on the air together.
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. We're going to do some fun things today.
Absolutely.
We have a whole slew of equipment that's running here, but the focus of it is something called MixEffect, which is an iOS app that Tony's been using for a while. I just got on board with it about a week ago, and we actually have the developer of the MixEffect app on the show today. And Tony had suggested we do this. I don't know if Atem, the developer, knows this, but Tony had actually reached out as soon as the app was, maybe it was even in beta, Tony. Or had just come out, and you were excited about it.
Yes. Yep. It was early. It was probably back in May, maybe early May. We had just finished the last live stream that we did together, and I was like, I saw Atem actually on another channel, and I was like, we can have him on. We should have him on. And then, things got busy and life got in the way, and here we are.
Right. And Atem's been on some other YouTube channels. Atem has his own YouTube channel, which we'll have to throw in the chat. And it's Atem TOW, Atem Tao. But he's been on some other channels recently, and mostly streaming related. But so tonight we thought we would talk a little bit more around the technical stuff, still about the app and what it does. But I personally am interested, and about you, Tony, about development process and what it takes to to write an iOS app, and how do you get feedback from people. I guess what are some of the things you were interested in hearing about, Tony?
Just that, and how much time and effort Atem has been putting into it. I mean, just since the time I've been using the app, I mean, new features come out constantly. So, and I guess I don't know how to write apps. I've never done it, but I could imagine that with the amount of features that are currently in MixEffect, the amount of time that goes into it. So yeah, I would like to hear his process and obviously see his demo as well.
Awesome. Yes, same here.
So
go ahead.
That said, Joe, why don't we? No further ado, why don't we bring Atem on and let him say hello to everybody and get the show underway?
Let's do it. There he is.
Hey, Atem.
How you doing?
Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here. Like Joe said, I've been using it probably for about 2 months now. I told him about it, and he finally got on board with it last week, and he wrote to me, and he was like, hey, dude, this MixEffect thing is amazing. I was like, I told you. So
That's what I like to hear.
We are so excited to have you here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome, Atem. And your channel, just so we get that, we'll probably mention it a few times, because, Atem, you just hit 1,000 subscribers, right?
I did. That's quite an accomplishment in the YouTube world. It's not like, a million like some people, but, got to start somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, it takes time, but it's fun. You meet a lot of cool people. And yeah, for those who don't know, when you hit 1,000 subscribers, that's when you can begin to apply for monetization. You're not going to pay off your house with the YouTube monetization, but it's something.
Yeah, I need to get that overall watch hours.
Exactly.
Now.
That's the harder one. Go ahead.
But congratulations, though, on hitting 1,000 subs. I think just this past week, right, Atem?
Yep, just this past week I hit 1,000. It was neat to see the little 1K instead of 999.
That's awesome.
Don't
That's
unsubscribe,
awesome.
People. Don't make me go to below the limit.
No, I'm sure you'll get a few. It looks like Ashley just posted in my chat here. I'll put it on the screen. So it's just slash Atem Tao. I guess the featured probably doesn't need to be there. That'll bring you to the featured videos. But it's just your name. All right, so well, I'm sure we'll get a few people who from our channels who will come over and visit who are interested in development and some cool apps.
Absolutely. So Adam, why don't you, before we get into the actual demo, why don't you just tell us, or tell the audience, because Joe and I know who you are, but why don't you tell the audience who you are, a little bit about yourself, who is Atem Tao, your background in development, and in your own words, describe what exactly is MixEffect.
Sure. If we want to go way, way back, long-time computer user from the days of the Apple II. If people will recall, like the Apple Newton, which was Apple's first kind of personal digital assistant handheld computer, I was kind of big in that world 20 plus years ago. Been doing a lot of mobile development, web development, and photography, and then in recent years, kind of been getting into video production. And when COVID hit and everyone kind of was starting working from home and doing kind of online streaming and virtual events, I kind of said, hey, what's this? Let's investigate this. And I got an A10 Mini over here, A10 Mini Pro, and I said, this is pretty cool. Hooked up my digital SLR camera to it and was able to do some wonderful things. But I quickly ran into problems with it where, there are only so many buttons on the physical hardware, and some of the buttons that I wanted to push didn't exist on here. And so I thought maybe I could write some software that could control it. And that's kind of the genesis of the MixEffect app. And I kind of just started very small, making an app that just turned on the downstream keyer, and then it just kind of grew from there and became the app that it is today.
It's awesome. Thanks for going through that.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, you actually segued right into our second question of how did you come up with the idea for MixEffect? But there you go. So.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Joe?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, so you said you've done some app development. So is this kind of, had you ever developed an app like this that's in the videos kind of space, or what kind of app development? You're mostly an iOS developer, right?
iOS. I do have one Mac app, but excuse me. I've done a lot of work in digital photography, so I've done created like workflows, not so far as apps, but workflows for like getting digital images wirelessly off of cameras.
Oh.
So I have like a 5D Mark IV that has like a built-in Wi-Fi chip into it. It also has the capability of sending images to FTP servers. So I've created this kind of automatic workflow for sending pictures automatically. You take the picture and it sends securely to a secure FTP server, and then from there it like sends it to like Dropbox, Google Photos, Apple Photos. It sends text messages so to computers, and then scripts run on those computers and then deliver them to kind of the people that need to see the photos in real time. So I do have a background kind of in like the photography workflow, and I wanted to see if I could like expand that into the video world with MixEffect.
Oh, that's awesome. Tony does a little bit of photography too.
Just as a hobby, though. Yep.
Lately, all my pictures are taken on my phone these days. My 5D Mark IV is my webcam right now.
That's awesome.
Well, just to comment on what you said, Adam, you did a fantastic job with MixEffect, and I see that all over the user group as well. Everybody just feels the same. So, question for you, real quick, and then I guess we'll get into the demo. From the idea of maybe I can write an app to actual beta to official first release, can you give us an idea of like the timeline, like from start to
Yeah. I started this, I think it'd be the end of 2020. And then kind of January, I really started focusing on it. The app actually started out more as a keying application. So something that would output HDMI through the HDMI port of an iOS device, like a green screen. Then you can overlay kind of like titles and stuff. Again, with the idea of like a downstream keyer. But then quickly, as I said earlier, I said this can be a full-on switching solution. And I kind of pivoted to what is now MixEffect. So that happened in January, and then I had the beta in March. So it was pretty much 2-3 months of hardcore coding, and then the beta cycle happened, and I released in May. And a lot of the features actually in MixEffect were a result of some of the user feedback that I was getting, and that was instrumental in kind of making the app where it is today. And even since the launch, as Tony, you mentioned earlier, I've released multiple updates bringing in a number of features that are well loved by the community. So I'm not stopping.
Wow, that's pretty quick though, considering what MixEffect is, Atem, and it's jam-packed with awesome features. That's quite a short timeline to get such a great product out. Kudos.
Yeah, it was a lot of work. I mean, if you think about it, you know, it's basically a replacement on iOS for the Atem software control application. So I obviously used that as a basis for kind of like what the app would do. So it wasn't like I was just coming up with kind of features from the get-go. I was saying, okay, I need to get the switching done. I need to get audio done. I need to get macros. So there was a kind of like a map of all the things I needed to do, a checklist, so to say.
Yeah, I'm definitely
awesome.
interested in diving a little deeper into the development process too after the demo, because it's pretty cool. I'm curious, you know, what you use and what you write in, what language. You know, I'd love to get a little deeper in that too. So, cool.
Sure.
So Tony, did we want to ask him to do the demo now? I'd love to see it.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
Take it away,
I'm going to
Atem.
bring you full screen, Adam.
Okay, so I'm going to go into SuperSource right now, and let's just bring in this one right here. So this is my iPad that I'm actually running my stream. I'm sending my signal over to Joe via RTMP, and this is my iPad. So this is MixEffect. So I have at the top kind of like program preview. I have these modules here like SuperSource. This is the upstream keyer, the downstream keyer. So if I wanted to bring in, say, my downstream keyer, which has a MixEffect logo here, you see that happen right there. And I can just tap the auto button and then make it disappear. We have the transition style. So if you're familiar with Atem software control from Blackmagic, it's the interface looks very familiar. I have media players, so you can see I can switch between my different media sources. So if I had like this is like a full screen image. I don't want to show that. Media player 2 is basically I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to transition to that. So that's basically the little thumbnail graphic for our streams today. And so this is basically the switcher interface. Down below, I have kind of macros that I could run here and other options here. What's great about this interface is that you can configure it. So if I go into the upper right corner, I can switch between different kind of switcher interfaces. So this one's the flying key one. Let's show one that looks a little different. This one is the SuperSource plus audio controls. And let's see, this one is probably just audio controls here. So you can really make the interface for MixEffect kind of what you want it to be. Down here on the left-hand side, we have the kind of the switcher controls, the individual sections. So this one is audio, so you can see my audio meters right here, and you can change things. You know, you can make it adjust the gain and stuff. You can go into the options to get more features. MixEffect does not support like all the equalization and dynamics. I'm not an audio engineer, and a lot of those things are kind of beyond me. Hopefully one day I'll be able to add those. But for the most part, you know, you have most of the audio controls that you have in the Blackmagic software. Down here is the macro section. What's great about macros in MixEffect is that you can add icons and colors. You can also sort by icon and name. So, you know, in the Blackmagic software, you basically it's just a list. And you have to swap between pages, but here you see all your macros, which is great. So if you wanted to, say, edit your macro, you could just like click on this little arrow here, and then you can change the color. If I want to change this color to say like this color there, and if I wanted to add an icon, let's do an ellipsis, and you can see a little preview down here. It changes it and save it. Then my macros are now sorted. This one, in this case, it's sorted by color, but if I wanted to sort it by index, you can see it like that. So it's a great way to be able to kind of filter your macros, which can get very unwieldy on a Blackmagic Atem. You can also filter by name, so if I want to see all the ones that have the word right in it, I can do that. The media section here shows you all your media that you've uploaded to your Atem. It doesn't show previews at the moment, but hopefully you name them well and you can figure out what they are. And then I can just right click on one of these things, and then let's find one. So if you just right click here, you can just set the thing to the media player 1, media player 2, and you see a little indication here of which one is the current selected one. You can also upload images from your iOS device. So you just hit the plus button, you say OK, and then you select your image, and then it gets added to your media pool here. You do have to select which slot you want to, and what slot is already occupied. It'll ask you if you want to replace it. So there is a way to kind of upload images. You can't upload images with transparency quite yet. The Atem, the Blackmagic kind of like the format for the images needs to be very specific. I haven't found the right way to do that, but that's one of the things that I want to add in a future version of the app. Down here, the transitions, pretty self-explanatory. You can change your mix, dip, wipe, and DVE settings. If you have a switcher that supports the Stinger transition, you also have that ability. So what MixEffect does is when it connects to an Atem switcher, it knows what Atem you're using. So it will only show you those features that work on that switcher. So for instance, this is running on Atem Mini Extreme ISO. But if you had an Atem Mini Pro, you wouldn't see, say, the SuperSource section because SuperSource doesn't exist on that device. Similarly, if you had like an Atem 2ME or Constellation, if you go to the switcher, you'd have like a little toolbar up here where you can switch between the 2 or 4 different MixEffect buses that you have. Upstream keyers, this is for showing kind of like a little picture-in-picture. So this is kind of interesting. I'll bring in my camera here, and then I'll bring this on air, and this is going to kind of bring a gigantic version of me up here. And what's great is that I can actually, with my finger, just change and move the DVE thing around here. I can resize it just with the pinch to drag motion, which is kind of neat. And I can I'll make that one disappear. Like, let's see. Let's make that disappear. It's not disappearing. Hold on a second. There we go. Downstream keyers, we already showed that earlier. That's just bringing in like the MixEffect logo that I have here. The SuperSource, this is a cool feature that I've, in the Atem software, there's basically 4 presets that you get, and that's it. And you're basically almost told to like make macros for all your SuperSource things. But with MixEffect, I can just create my own list of presets here and then switch between them. So for instance, if I wanted to go to grid, I just do this. And everything is happening in real time, and it's doing the automatic transition. So if I want to go to a 4 grid, I can do like that and go back to the camera plus my iPad. And I can also, again, tap on the little lock icon and just like move things. Is it exactly the way I want? If I like this kind of setup, I could save this as a new preset or overwrite the a grid view. Let's take a look at this one. And let's say this, the one in the bottom right is showing my iPhone right now, and I want to change that. Let's change it to like color bars so we can see something a little different. Let's say these are like 4 people that are talking on your on a live stream. And then you can hit these little buttons here, and it will highlight the box that you selected. So you can say like, okay, so box number 3 is talking, so I'll highlight them. Box number 4 is it's talking now, I'll switch to them. Okay, no one's talking, or I want to switch back to the unhighlighted view, I can just hit one button and it will like unhighlight everyone. And this also ties into a feature that I've added in the audio section, which is called Video Follows Audio. So you can actually configure MixEffect to say like when this particular mic goes above a certain level, I want you to highlight a certain box. And then when no one is talking, let's just go back to the unhighlighted things. Or you could also have it set such that when the trigger happens, what that trigger looks like down here. You can also have it say run a macro or just change the program source. Or again, as I said, like run a SuperSource preset. So if someone on one particular audio channel says something, I can switch to like the 1-up of that person, right? And then when he's finished talking, or when the master audio goes down, it can switch back to the 4-up. So that's an interesting way to kind of control your SuperSource. There's also integration with L.L.C. So if you have, say, a Stream Deck, which are very popular in the video production world, you can basically put your SuperSource presets onto your Stream Deck and then just push them. So I have a Stream Deck right here. If I can show it to the screen right here. And then I'm just going to push. I'll just push back to the camera 2 in the iPad like that. Let's see, just running down the list, there's color generators, pretty self-explanatory. It affects the 2 color generators that are on most Blackmagic A10 switchers. If you have HyperDeck, you can control up to 4 HyperDecks. I don't have any HyperDecks anymore. I had one on loan from Blackmagic, but I returned it recently. But you can just control your HyperDecks. You can, what's cool on the iPhone version of MixEffect is that you get haptic feedback when you do the jog controls. So you actually feel each frame move as you're moving from frame to frame. The auxiliary section just lets you choose, configure the HDMI outputs. And a new feature in MixEffect that I added recently was the ability to bring in a remote multi-view. So the A10 Mini Extreme has 2 HDMI outs. One of those HDMI outs I'm pulling into my Mac Mini that has a USB capture card in it. And what I can do is I can tap Connect, and I'll tap Done here, and I'll bring in my multi-view or whatever I actually have being output from that HDMI out into MixEffect. So think of it like a picture-in-picture multi-view that's running in the app. So you could be on an iPad and actually see and mix straight from here. You don't have to have your 7-inch monitor or your giant, 24-inch monitor. You could be remote. You could be in the ballroom itself and doing your live switching. You don't have to be kind of fixed behind your desk. And just to show you that it does work, I'm going to push the program button on the video out, and you can see that it just switched to that. And if I hit auto, you'll see that it's transitioning. And it's pretty fast because it's all going over the local network. It's not going over the internet and then back into MixEffect. So that's the remote multi-view feature. Finally, there's like the output section. So you can see here are my stream statistics that I'm sending to Joe. And then smorgasbord of features. You can just configure things like the multi-view here. You can change kind of like your audio settings for like split audio. I have my mic set to split the left and right channels. So all sorts of things. So basically anything you can do, almost anything you can do within the Blackmagic Atem software control app, you can do in MixEffect, with the exception of full camera control and some of the more kind of equalizer and dynamic settings within audio. And real quick, you could also have multiple switchers. So if I had my A10 Mini connected, my Mini Pro connected, right now it's turned off, I can actually switch directly to that device. And I could also run, this is on an iPad, I could have multiple versions of MixEffect running. So I can actually have, this one's connected to the A10 Mini Extreme ISO. So I could have one that's looking at the SuperSource section and then one that's looking at the switcher and do multiple things at the same time. There's also, like, if you're familiar with iOS, there's full support for shortcuts. So you can automate a lot of features in MixEffect from shortcuts, which is really powerful because, Blackmagic Atem macros are basically it just runs the actions, versus a shortcut can have things like conditional logic, and it can pull in all the data that's the state of the Atem and say, like, well, if the downstream key is on, I don't need to do anything. I'll just change the input. Or if it's off, I can bring it on. So you can do a lot of things like if this, then that within your, to control your switcher, which is really powerful. So that's a brief overview of MixEffect. Do you have any questions?
Hundreds. No, thanks for doing that. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I learned a lot. Just playing with the app versus hearing you talk through some of these more advanced things. I think I'm just scratching the surface.
Absolutely. I'm still scratching the surface 2 months later. There's so much to learn. I mean, probably at this point, I'm using it for primarily SuperSource layouts, and it's really changed. Not only, I don't do many live streams like a lot of other guys, but I do use it. It's become a big part of my workflow just in YouTube video recording. So it's been a game changer for that. But I do have a quick question, though, for you, Adam, and I know Joe wants to get into the a little bit of the development side of things, but it just, well, as you were speaking about it, the feature, not the feature, but the fact that the iPad has to be in the forefront at all times in order for it to stay connected to the Atem switching software. I know there's the workaround is use the split screen, but is that a limit? I just want to know, is that a limitation on Apple's end, or what's the reason for that?
It's a limitation on iOS. So iOS is very aggressive at backgrounding or suspending applications. So if you go to the background and go to a different app, wait a few seconds and then come back to MixEffect, it's going to disconnect and try to reconnect. It's also something with Atem too. So Atem's and their controllers, which are like Atem software control and MixEffect, they need they're constantly communicating back and forth, saying, I'm here. Here's my new data. I'm here. Send me more data. So if there's any interruption in that connection, the Atem switcher will disconnect its connection as well. So you kind of have them both running at the same time. So on a Mac, you don't have that problem because it's things can run in the background, right? So MixEffect, there is actually a version that works on M1 Macs. You can have MixEffect kind of running in the background, like the windows should still be kind of visible, but you can be in other apps and it will work. I am hoping to optimize that so it works a lot better. For me, we can talk about this from a development perspective. It was basically a checkbox in Xcode, Apple's development environment, to say make it run on M1 Macs, because on M1 Macs, basically when you run MixEffect, it's like running it on a little iOS. I wouldn't say emulator, but since it's Apple Silicon, but it's like running it in a little iOS kind of operating space.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I've got it running just as a test. I ran it on my M1 MacBook Air here, and it works perfectly. But so we have a question here from TVJ asking, is it only iOS? I think the answer is yes, but any plans for other?
Yeah, this is a common question. So I will support kind of Apple products, so iOS and Apple Silicon Macs. As I said earlier in the beginning of the show, I'm like long time Apple user from the Apple II. So it goes to show how old I am, I guess. And I have no interest in kind of like porting it to Windows or Android. There's actually a lot of kind of third-party libraries for kind of controlling Atems that can run on Windows. Actually, there's an SDK for Blackmagic's controlling Blackmagic switchers for Windows. So it's not preventing anyone from developing a version that runs on Windows or Android. I think just someone needs to take the time to build it. I think on Windows, there's less of interest because you already have Atem software control, right? And Android, a lot of people use Android phones. I don't know the market of the Android tablet space, and I'm thinking that a lot of people who are using MixEffect are using it on iPads.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. We have another from David Grishko, who I know David. He's a regular on the channel, and he uses the Atems for his church, I believe, and has a whole setup there. So he's asking the difference, kind of, because it is a free app, right? And then there's a pro version.
That's correct. So it's free to download and to use. There's a 30-day trial of MixEffect Pro, and then if you wanted to buy to unlock all the features, it's a one-time purchase. There's no subscription. In the U.S., it's $50. In other countries, it may be a little different based on kind of the tax rate and VAT prices. If you don't buy it and you just use it for the switching purposes, it will work. You just have access to like changing the program in preview and pushing the cut and auto buttons. I think that's it. There might be a few other things. But it's pretty limited. But again, there's a 30-day trial of MixEffect Pro, which I think should give you more than enough time to evaluate its feature set.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Do you have any? Sorry,
I mean,
Tony.
I think I was gonna say, Joe. I think I downloaded the app, went into the 30-day trial, and within 2 hours decided to buy it. I mean, it was just, yeah, it was awesome.
Any questions on your channel, Tony,
And
that
I
you want to put up, or?
Yeah, no questions here on my end. How about on your end, Adam?
No, I'm good.
So I actually have a question. I can't put up my own question, but I'm going to ask it verbally. So I know we were going back and forth a little bit about the versus APIs use or how to communicate to the actual Blackmagic switchers. Could you talk about like how you actually navigate that? Like how are you actually talking to Because if you use like Companion using OSC, right? I assume it's some protocol.
Yeah, so let's, I guess, step back in the world of kind of Blackmagic A10 switcher development. There is the official SDK that exists that's from Blackmagic that works on Windows and Mac. It's written in C, Objective C. It's very obtuse, and for me, it's like I just couldn't understand it. But there's been a lot of libraries, third-party libraries, that have used kind of like a reverse engineered version of the protocol, the underlying protocol, which Blackmagic hasn't like officially kind of released. But people kind of figured out how it's the software is communicating to the switcher and written kind of libraries. So someone wrote a library that works on Swift, which is kind of Apple's development language that they're promoting these days. And it had a good connection kind of setup, so you can connect to the Atem, but it didn't have many kind of the command set kind of fleshed out. And so what I was working on, and this is, in the December, January, and February time, was basically going through all the commands that the switcher could support and writing them into this library. The library is open source. The version of my library is not currently available. I think one day I will make it public, but not quite yet. But other people are actually using this library as well to make their own kind of Atem controlling software.
Oh, wow.
Applications. Yeah. So it's called Swift Atem. You can find it on GitHub.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Gotcha. So I guess as a follow-up to that, the multi-view that you were showing is you're basically having to take the multi-view output from like an Atem Mini Extreme or Pro, Atem Mini Pro, encode it, and then send it to, I guess it's like a turn server kind of thing, and then you're basically like a mirror and back to it, right? Is there any way to eventually take, like, has Blackmagic reached out to you and talked about maybe taking native feeds? Because how cool would that be to actually be able to switch on the iPad, like see the feeds on the iPad?
That would be great. And actually, it probably could be possible. I would have to write this feature, and it'd probably take a lot of work. But you take the incoming feed, because it's basically a browser, a web page that the remote multi-view is showing you, the remote web view. I could probably cut up that web page and store each of the little boxes as like a thumbnail, and then in the super source section, if I can come back to this,
Sure.
show my full screen again. I could theoretically, let me just bring up the multi-view again. So you can imagine an app that says grab each of those like 8 squares in the bottom of the multi-view, and then overlay them on top of the super source kind of squares, so you can actually see it live preview. It'd be a lot of work, and I'm not saying I'm going to do it right now, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Now, if Blackmagic were to release kind of like an iOS SDK, then obviously it's a lot easier. You'd have to do some kind of like hack and workaround to get it to work. And the way the remote web view works is that I'm just taking the webcam output, or actually the HDMI output, into an USB capture card, and then I'm sending it to Video Ninja, which used to be called OBS Ninja, and that's creating like basically a web page that I'm pulling in here. If you can look at the URL, you can see like the URL of this. I'll probably change this after this stream is done, and then it's just displaying that URL in this little window here.
So in theory, you could be mixing, like on Sunday, you could be mixing your church's worship or whatever, and you could put a football URL in there, and you could be watching football and not to.
You could. The audio would come through too, so just turn up the audio.
That's awesome. Oh, sorry. I was just go back to the 3 up. There you go.
That's okay. I'll go back to this.
Let's see. Oh, we have a couple more. Tony, do you have anything to ask while I look at these questions that have come in?
No, I'm just enjoying the stream. I'm supposed to be on the stream, but I'm enjoying the stream.
Yeah, it's fun. Go ahead.
I like listening to Atem explain and feel his thought process and what goes into it. So it's intriguing.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe a good segue into like your process in general for development. Because as I was watching some of the videos, by the way, subscribe to Adam's channel if you're interested in this app, because there's some really good tutorials, and you are a very good speaker, pleasant to listen to. So I mean, yeah, you do a really nice job. So, but anyway, as I was watching these videos, I'm thinking to myself, okay, this app really hasn't come out that long ago, and you release features so quickly. So, you know, do you just work like 15 hours a day? Like, what's your process? Do you open up like VS Code or something and you just start typing code into this? Like, what's your process?
Yeah. So I write in Xcode in Swift, and then the kind of the user interface stuff is in Swift UI, which is kind of what Apple's been promoting. And I guess, like, coming back to what I said earlier about the Blackmagic SDK for the Mac, it's just, you look at it and you're like, this kind of development language is like a lot of brackets, and it's like, well, what am I doing? But with Swift and Swift UI, I kind of understand kind of instinctively how to make these apps, and it makes writing the app a pleasure to do. You know, there's obviously times when you run into a bug and you're like, oh God, how am I going to fix this? But it's like a puzzle to me, as opposed to like, I don't know, some super complex math problem that I don't even know where to get started. So I see all the puzzle pieces and I just try to figure out how to put them together. And that's kind of like why I think the app kind of came together so quickly, is that I just grok it, I just understand it, you know.
You absolutely do, because I have to tell you, when I first started with it, one of the things with SuperSource that I came across after I made a couple of layouts, I didn't realize that the box sources weren't locked, right? So when you switch SuperSource layouts, it kept whatever input box source was in the layout, right? So
right.
I was like, oh man, I was like, oh, there's got to be a way. And I went to the user group and started looking, and I saw Tom Q's channel, and he had actually posted the same exact thing right around the same time I was experiencing that. And I was like, I jumped right on his thread, and I remember saying to you, Atem, how can we do this? That'd be something I'd be interested in too, along with Tom. And you immediately came back with a workaround using shortcuts, and you know, gave all the instructions on that. But then, to my surprise, like a day and a half later, like I think it was in MixEffect 1.0.6, it might have been the release for box sources. I might be off on the version, but like it was literally less than 48 hours, and you released the update that now all of a sudden we had locked boxes. I was like, oh my God, this guy's like amazing.
How did you do that?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I was saving the box sources when you save the presets. So when I was like, I was thinking like, oh, this might be kind of hard. But then when I looked at what I check to see if, you know, the box sources are locked, and then okay, switch the sources. And actually, Tom was actually very, very instrumental in kind of like some other features where like he was doing boxes off screen, so that they were in when you switch presets, and that was something I didn't even think people would do. I was just like disabling boxes of that.
Right.
But that was actually another cool feature that he important in the development from both. To keep bringing in their suggestions. I can't say I'm going to implement everything, but I would definitely take a look at it. And if it makes sense and if it's kind of easy to implement, then yeah, you might see it in a new version. And we can talk about like what's coming up in MixEffect maybe at the end of this show.
So, go ahead. Sorry, Tom.
No, go ahead, Joe.
I was going to ask about what the process is like when you make a change like that. I mean, obviously you write your code. Sounds like an Xcode. You're writing mostly Swift. You have to be an Apple, registered developer, right? But then, what if you want to submit when I get these app updates, I'm like, okay, how long ago did the developer submit that? And then the reviews and what's the kind of the process there?
So typically with apps, the longest time for an app review is before you have it on the store. So for MixEffect, I don't know, like a week. It was a lot back and forth. They had a bunch of things that they wanted me to kind of change. and I changed them, and then they approved it. But then after it's been approved, subsequent releases happen within, I would say, like a day or two. Sometimes within hours of you submitting it. I don't know when these App Store reviewers are like awake, but I've seen things where it gets approved like within 6 hours, and then other times where I have to like wait a day and a half.
So it's so it's okay. So it's not too crazy.
Yeah, I think it depends on like what your app is doing, right? There's like another app that I have that's like has constantly been getting rejected because it's too simplistic. Although I think I find it very useful, so I just let that one kind of sit by the wayside and say, okay, I'll come back to it one day when I add more features that make it compelling for users.
Gotcha.
Does everything have to be approved, Atem? Like, I mean, something as simple as a bug fix for a feature that's already been approved?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So there's been like, if you look in the change log, there's like one update where I had just like a localization change. There's like a misspelling or something like that, and that had to be approved. It was approved quickly, but it still had to be approved.
Wow.
So I try to roll in bug fixes and like a few little feature updates in between releases. I'm kind of slowing down right now because I find that the app is in a pretty good space. There are some holes I kind of want to patch up, but there's also other projects that I want to work on that are kind of like taking up some of my time. So right now I'm focusing on kind of like little bug fixes I find, localizations that people are submitting, and then new features that I think are like pretty easy to implement.
Wow.
I'm glad somebody asked this because, so for those who don't know, when you switch between SuperSource layouts on the A10 Mini Extreme or others, you don't get the fancy like animations between the boxes. So like, for example, if I go between this one, this one, see how it's like swooping in and out, right? So there's some math in there, and the first time I saw that was on Doug Johnson's channel, where he wrote a bunch of code, and I'm like, oh man, that's that's just going to take time. It's not that it's out of the question. And then I found your app, and I'm like, oh, I could just tap on these. So how does that actually work to do those animations? Is that the app? Yeah.
Yeah. So the math and control is happening within MixEffect, and it's sending those commands to the Atem. So I'm doing the calculations, and in MixEffect you can kind of change kind of like the transition style using a different mathematical formula. Like if you want it to like come in slower at the end or speed up at the end, you can switch that up. But all that math is happening within the app, so it knows because it can query the Atem switcher for the state of all the boxes. It knows where all the boxes are. Okay, right at this very point in time, and it knows when you tap a preset where the boxes need to be. And so then it calculates all those transitions, like, and you set the speed of the transition from like instant, which would look like a cut, to like extra fast, fast, normal, slow, and extra slow. And it will calculate all the different movements, and it just sends all those commands to the Atem to execute. So
it's actually a stream of locations, box locations in succession?
Yes. Yes. So if you look at kind of like how people have done SuperSource macros, like move box one like a little bit, and then they do it for the other boxes, and then they say like add a macro frame pause, and then they go to the next one. So if you look at kind of how those scripts have done in the past, that's exactly what they're doing. But I'm just sending them in real time to the
That's
Atem
awesome.
switcher.
Well, as a follow-up then from Gaby, on a newer iPad or newer devices, does that animation run smoother, or should it run pretty much on even older ones?
It should run the same speed. So if your network connection is kind of not so good, use MixEffect on like an Ethernet connection, a hardwire, but it does work over Wi-Fi. I use it on my phone on Wi-Fi all the time, and works well for me. So I think some iPads, have, I don't know, flaky Wi-Fi chips in them. I have an iPad Pro, it's one from 2018, and I've read reports, not regarding MixEffect, but just read reports that like the Wi-Fi gets flaky. And even I'm using it sometimes, I like go to a web page and like Safari is just like hanging there. I don't know what's happening,
Gotcha. So yeah.
But if I switch to Ethernet or like restart the device, it like works. So Your mileage may vary on iPads, but newer iPads might have better chips.
Gotcha. Did you realize that, Tony? Because that those transitions.
Yes, I did, and in fact, you can. Adam showed in one of his videos how you can actually change the speed of them as well.
Oh, gotcha.
So you can have them go slow, or completely take them away, so they're like a hard cut.
Yeah. So if you want to cut back to my screen, I can show that to the users.
Yep.
So if you are running MixEffect, you may not have this setting turned on, but if you go to the user interface settings, you can turn on this kind of show transition speed menu. Just a quick way to get it in the visual editor of SuperSource. So you see this little rabbit down here, and you can switch between instant and extra fast and all the other ones. So if I set to instant and I go back to camera 1, you'll see it's basically look like a cut, like that. And then I'll go back to this camera and I'll do like a extra slow. We'll see how this one looks. I'll transition this SuperSource. So you see the blocks kind of moving really slowly. I prefer fast for me, so I do it like that. You can also change the speed from this little options menu here. If you just tap that and tap animation, you can set speed, but there's just like a bunch of clicks you have to go through. And as I said previously, you can change the animation style. There's all these different mathematical things. You can experiment with which one looks the best for you. And these can be controlled also from OSC. So you can just have a button that's like switch to instant speed, switch to slow speed, switch to fast speed.
Thanks for showing that. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, I have a question from Sigmund Judge, if you want to pop me up on the screen.
There you go.
Okay, and there we go.
Yep, it was up. It's gone now. There it is. Okay.
It should be back. There we go. All right, so Sigmund says, how far does Atem want to go with MixEffect? And that was kind of tied in with one of our questions. Would he be interested in bringing in options for third-party audio devices like the Rodecaster Pro or video sliders? And then he has a subsequent comment that says, or lighting control.
Yeah, it's always a question of like how far you want. Is this MixEffect Pro or is this like Control Everything Pro, right? And there's a lot of apps that do kind of like audio stuff. Like the Rodecaster Pro, I have one here on my desk. You can see it in just right there. I don't know if there's like a third-party API for it. So if that's the case, then I don't think you can control it. But there's and for lighting, there's a bunch of apps that. I mean, OSC was designed for like a lighting, right? Or is it sound, open sound control? But there's a lot of like MIDI support, like to control lights and stuff. So I don't think that MixEffect Pro is going to become like that control pad, like a touch OSC style thing. Or what's the other app is like? I think there's another app called Control Center, which can control lots of stuff. And even the Stream Deck, right? You go to the Stream Deck, all the plugin page, you see like this gigantic list of things that can control. I don't see MixEffect being that app.
Yeah, specific to Go ahead, Tony.
At what point, Adam, do you say like, okay, like this is jam packed. Where does it end? And then where do you move on to something else? So like, what's on the roadmap for MixEffect? Yeah.
So, I think the app, like I said before, is in a very good space. If there's a bug that someone finds, then yeah, let's fix that bug. But in terms of like features, it does pretty much all that I want it to do. I like adding things like equalization and camera control. That's a complex from a UI perspective, and I don't know if really people want to like do all that from MixEffect. I mean, just use Atem software control, right? You have that right there. Just pull out your Mac or your PC and just tinker with your cameras and your equalization settings there. Or maybe write a macro that does it, and then you have a macro for it, right? I do want to add the ability to upload kind of graphics with PNGs, transparency, because then you could basically use it for like lower thirds, right? I do have like shortcuts that like generate a lower third, but it uses either a luma key or a chroma key. It's not using the transparency within the image itself. And there's a few other little things that I probably want to bring to the app that like the Atem software control has. Actually, one of the features that I did add is if you bring me back to the screen, I can show that. So in the latest version, this was it's a very simple feature, but found on network. So finally, you don't have to know what your IP address is of your switcher. You just have to tap on the button and it will go and fill it in for you. So this is a common kind of pain point for people, that they couldn't figure out what the IP address of their switcher was. It doesn't solve the problem where the switcher and the iPad are like on two different physical networks. You still need to get them on the same network, but at least once they're on the same network, you can at least tap the button and then it fills in the information for that. So that's an example of a feature. Like, I want to find like the pain points that still exist within MixEffect and then solve those problems for my users.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I just realized, awesome, Tony, that the the Atem Mini, not the Atem Mini Pro, doesn't support DHCP, because I happen to pick up a used Atem Mini. So that's an example of where it could be hard coded on another network. So
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So Atem, I guess we're going to probably eventually start bringing this to a wrap soon. What is the best way for, I guess, folks to correspond with you, interact with you, reach out to you, report problems, etc.?
Yeah. There's a community page on the MixEffect.app website, which lists a bunch of ways you can reach me. So it's basically wherever you are, I'll probably be. So I have like a Slack community. On Facebook, I have a MixEffect Facebook group, which is has a lot of people on it. There's a mailing list. I don't send too many mails. There's a feedback link in the app itself. If you go to the settings app, you can tap on the feedback link. Twitter. So go there and find where you are, and then I'll be there.
I have one last question for you, Atem. What's the most interesting kind of use case or feedback you've gotten where you're like, wow, that's pretty cool, somebody's using my app for that? Or like, somebody on a cruise ship out in the middle of nowhere or something? Like, any interesting stories?
There was a guy who's using it with like rodeos.
Oh, cool.
Which I thought was kind of, and he was like, and then there's another person who has like a bar in Northern California, and he's like, I could have a beer in one hand and MixEffect in the other hand, and I could like switch my show. So I found that a lot of people are using MixEffect for a variety of different reasons. So Tony, you mentioned you're using it for like SuperSource, right? I have there's other people who like it for the video follows audio, for like doing automatic switching. There's some people who just use it for like the basic switcher stuff or for macros. So it really I'm finding it neat to hear all the different use cases that people are using it for. Because again, not everyone has SuperSource, right? Not everyone has the Atem Mini Extreme ISO. But it's just neat to see how people are using it. I really like it. And the fact that it's all around the world. So I look at like the people who are joining like the Facebook group, they're like, it's not just the US, it's Africa, Europe, Australia, it's all over the place.
Well, that's really neat. What about Blackmagic? Have they kind of given you kudos about your app, or are they not thrilled, or what?
Yeah, no, they've been generally supportive. I mean, they're very supportive of kind of like the developer community. I think if I wrote it in the official SDKs, they'd be even more supportive. But they have a warehouse over here in Northern California, so I've actually been able to get a lot of kind of loaner equipment from them to help me kind of debug kind of like problems with, it's not working on the Atem production 4K switcher. Why? It's because it's sending this piece of data, and I would not have found that out if I hadn't hooked it up and had my debugger running and seeing like what the switcher is actually sending. So they've been very, very helpful. At one point I had like a Constellation, a 4ME broadcast studio, and the 4K production, and this office was loud and hot. These switchers are not quiet. So yeah,
I was wondering how you got all those boxes to test with. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it helps that I live 20 minutes away from the warehouse, so that's also key. I can just drive down.
Yeah, we should mention where we are in the world. So Atem, you're out. You said San Francisco Bay Area.
That's right.
Tony's in North Carolina, and I'm in Connecticut. So apologies. I've gotten a couple messages saying that, Atem, a couple points you were breaking up. I think it's probably just the lovely internet, upload speeds we deal with. So
yeah, I live in the Silicon Valley, and you would think there's FiOS everywhere, fiber everywhere, but I'm stuck on. Load, but poor upload speeds. So I apologize if my internet connection has been spotty today.
Gotcha. Yeah, no problem.
Wow. So, I guess, like I said, we'll start bringing it to a close because I'm looking at that the time frame that we gave ourselves, and I just want to say, Adam, thank you so much for being here. I can't get enough of MixEffect. I want to learn so much more. So that maybe the next time we chat or whatever, I could say, hey, now I'm doing all this stuff with it. But I just want to, some closing comments that I have is, like, I love how customizable it is. Like the different panes on the different pages and things like that. Super source, like I've already made it known that I love that. And the filtering options with the tags, that just is a bonus. What I need to start getting into more of is the shortcuts, because I see the power behind them, but I never really even, I've been a Mac user all my life and an Apple guy, but I just never bothered with the phone getting into the iOS shortcuts. So I could see that there's some power behind that. So I want to start getting involved with that. But of all the great things about MixEffect, I have to say one thing, that without you, it's not possible. So I want to thank you. And thank you for your attentiveness to your viewers and the ability to listen to what they have to offer as far as suggestions, because that's far and few in between. So the fact that you do that is awesome. And not only do you listen, but then you turnaround time is like freaking incredible. So
Thank you.
So those are my closing thoughts. I just want to say thank you so much for being here with us. And Joe, I mean, I'll
yeah,
turn it
absolutely.
over to you.
I mean, you said it great, Tony. Awesome. It's the app that I think I saw a quote somewhere on your website. The app that Blackmagic should have made. So somebody wrote I don't know if it was on your website or somebody wrote a comment on the App Store or something. But that's exactly right. I mean, I was trying to fumble around with SuperSource, trying to make layouts and things, and it just makes it so easy. And all the other, like I said, I've learned. I'm just scratching the surface. Tony's a lot farther along, but appreciate you being on the channel. Those who are watching on all of our channels, just make sure to subscribe to Adam's channel, and yeah, but buy the app if you're using the Atem. I mean, it's a one. By the way, I love that you're not doing a subscription. I'm so sick of subscriptions. I feel like you look at the credit card statement, everything's a subscription. I could just buy the app, and it's does it support family sharing?
It does not support family sharing at the moment. So that's like there's a few, there's some things you need to. It's a checkbox in the App Store Connect, and I just haven't set it yet. I think I probably will eventually. But by not being a subscription, you run the problem of, what's the kind of the addressable market space, right? If everyone has MixEffect, then the next year you're not getting any money, right?
Right.
And so there is a benefit to subscriptions. I personally don't like them. I have several software packages that I do subscribe to, but personally I just don't like that. But I don't know, maybe that's the wrong decision for the app, right? From a long-term kind of sustainability perspective.
Well, it's a version 2 and special features and stuff.
We'll see.
Maybe you can do some pro features as it comes out, something like that.
Yeah.
So, because I'm sure people want to support. If you build a good app, people are going to want to support you. So, yeah.
Yeah. There's actually one thing I did want to show to
sure.
viewers out there, kind of like what's coming in the next version. So if you can bring back my screen here. So this was actually a feature request from Tom Q again. Great user of SuperSource and great source of feedback. So if you take a look here, so one of the features, if we're in the switcher place, a lot of people before they said, I'm in SuperSource, but I actually really want to go to the grid view. Version MixEffect, the current version 1.1.1, you can actually tap on this little, and then it will actually take you to the grid view directly. So if you want to live in that space, you can. And so what's coming in the next version is this new view, which is called the detail view. So you get slightly bigger icons, but what's also cool is that you actually see visually what the sources are and which ones are locked and which ones are kind of hidden. Let me bring this up kind of full screen so you can see even bigger. Actually,
That's
I didn't get
pretty
that much
cool.
bigger.
It's nice. Yeah.
I'll say this size. So you can see okay, in this camera 1 super source, the 5D Mark IV input, which is input 1, is locked. Okay, and then the other ones, these are what the other ones are. if you look at like number 2, the iPad one is locked here. And then if we go down to the bottom, this 4-grid portraits, we see that there's this little lock icon down here. That means it's using a locked box sources. And then it's locked to input 1, 5D, media player 1, media player 2, and iOS. So if I actually tap on this, you'll see it switched to this. If I go back to here, and then, but if you look at like the 4-grid one, so you see I went to the lock box source for the 4-grid portraits, and that's set input 2 to MP1 and input 3 to MP2 and input 4 to iOS. And you see on the one on the left, the 4-grid, it's adopted whatever those sources are. So earlier, Tony, you said that, oh, the sources follow within the presets, right? So you actually see what's coming up next when you tap on these buttons, right? Unless they're locked, what's the indicator that you get is locked, then you see the actual source it's going to go to. So this is a way, maybe if you're using SuperSource exclusively, you could be like in this view here and just switching your thing, and you say, oh, I need to go this one, and I can see exactly what source is being switched to.
Yes, helpful, very helpful. Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again, Adam, for coming on. Really appreciate it. This was fun. And Tony, we'll probably stay on for a minute or two and just wrap up on how we're doing the stream, but we'll let Adam get back to writing his apps, his great apps. Thanks again, Adam.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Hope to do it again sometime.
Adam. Appreciate it.
Now.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Awesome. That was fun, Tony.
That was cool. I learned some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
He is, you're right, he's a good speaker. He's very calm, very easy to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's like watching a professional presentation. So I guess, yeah, just quickly, do we want to go through kind of how we're saying this? I know there were a couple little dropouts here and there, but that's because we all aren't on super duper fiber internet, but maybe soon, Tony.
I have fiber.
Oh, you have fiber where you are?
I have fiber here and at the condo, and I'll have it at the new place too.
I should move to North Carolina. But anyway, so I know we've gone through this before, and there's a few people who nerd out on it. So we're mixing, everything's being mixed here in Connecticut on an A10 Mini Extreme ISO. We're also recording because the ISO has that capability. Tony and Adam are sending to 2 Atem streaming bridges, which are kind of proprietary boxes that talk to the Atem Mini Pro and the Web Presenter HD, and I think the new Web Presenter 4K, Atem Extreme. So Tony's on an Atem Mini Extreme, and I think Adam was as well, but you could use the Pro. So those come into the streaming bridges. Those go HDMI into my Atem Mini Extreme. I mix those together. Then we're on a back channel over Zoom so that we can hear real-time audio, because the Stream Decks, it's about a second of delay. So that's where you saw, it's coming across the country from Adam, and if the upload is a little bit flaky, on somebody's internet, it could drop out for a second, but it does a good job of keeping someone, because other protocols and other boxes I've seen would just drop out, so at least it would keep him live. So then I'm not actually streaming from the Atem Mini Extreme ISO. I'm taking the program out of that into a Teradek Video Pro.
Joe, before you go any further, because I know this is going to segue into what's coming. Typically, what you just described is what most people would do, and then they would once they get the inputs from their guests into their Atem, then typically from their Atem, they're going to go out to a subscription-based service like a Restream to get it to stream on the multiple channels simultaneously. That's what the typical YouTubers are probably going to do, or some of them that are a little bit more tech savvy set up their own RTMP servers and do it that way to get the multiple streams. But what you're doing, whether you're doing it from the Teradek or you're doing it from the Atem, where you're going with the stream is where I think it's different and sets what we're doing apart from what a lot of people are doing. So I didn't mean to cut you off with talking with the Teradek, but now I want, you can take it from there. I just wanted to set the stage.
That's a good point, because all that, like, you might be doing it, at an event, at whatever. I know David does the church thing, and so yeah, up to that, it's probably pretty standard. the Teradeks, the videos, there's a Video Go, Video Pro, Video X. They make and LiveU makes another version. They're encoders, but they support something called cellular bonding. And what cellular bonding does is it can take in multiple connections. It's not just cellular. It could be the internet at a venue. It could be Wi-Fi. So I actually have 3 phones. I have a T-Mobile, a Verizon, and an AT&T phone that are all driving it. Then I also have a Verizon hotspot, and I have my local internet. So the output from the Atem Mini Extreme ISO goes. The program output goes into that encoder, and then it breaks up that signal path. I assume it probably duplicates those packets and tags them, and then it uses a service called ShareLink that you pay for on the Teradek. Teradek owns it, ShareLink, and then it puts all those packets back together. So if I were to just yank one of these connections, or I lose my home internet or whatever, it fixes it. It self-heals it because I'm assuming it's duplicating those packets. So anyway, from the ShareLink service, it goes to, I could go right from the ShareLink service to YouTube, but I end up going over to AWS Media Live, Elemental Media Live, which allows me to do a whole bunch of things to it, and I can send it to multiple destinations. So if I wanted to go to 50 YouTube channels, I could. And maybe I wanted to archive it, maybe I wanted to send it to a website, whatever I wanted to do with it, I can do with it. So it's a hop, skip, and a jump to be able to really, there's a lot of testing here. That's part of why I'm wanted to do this too. Is it's fun to really play with all the gear and see what works and what doesn't, and that type of thing. So, any questions from you, Tony?
Right. No, and nothing from the chat. I mean, we've talked about the process so much that I mean, it's embedded.
Yeah,
but it's cool and it's awesome. So.
Absolutely. Anything else you wanted to cover before we wrap up?
No, I just want to thank you for teaming up with me to do this, and thank all the viewers on all the channels for tuning in. You know what we never did? We welcomed Atem, but we never welcomed the viewers from Atem's channel. So I do apologize for that. Thank you. Yeah, thank you everybody for being here on all 3 channels.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are going to all 3. So cool.
Yeah, but that's about it.
Awesome.
Really.
Well, stay tuned. I'm sure there's more content on all of our channels coming. And have a good night. Have a good rest of your week and weekend. All right.
That's awesome.
Good
night, everybody.
Take care.